So we're going to do three things in this town hall meeting. We want to talk about spiritually where our church is. Then we want to talk about the challenges our church faces. And then we're going to talk about financially where our church is. So as we begin, I really want to emphasize spiritually where our church is. And I think the Lord is blessing this church as He always has. And we see that in a number of ways. And we will just remind you at the beginning of this, I know we said a lot, that we want to create a gospel-centered community where we do everything we do for the sake of and because of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we see a lot of different metrics, but we're actually going to begin today with a testimony from Ian Hubble. Ian is going to come. Ian's a new member in our church. So I just want you to hear from somebody who's experienced our church, and then we're going to go and talk about that. Ian, thanks. And you can do whatever awkward thing you want with that.
I'll do my best. I'm not used to microphones, so if I start to do this, just let me know. So my name is Ian Hubble. I am the husband of Brianna Hubble and the father of three wonderful little children. Just to start off, I'd like to give a little bit of background of who I am and how I grew up. So I grew up upstate New York. I grew up outside of the church and didn't have really any connection to a church. Some experiences that I had were primarily, candidly, you're a sinner, you can never make up for that, and it is something that you will never be able to do, but say Hail Marys and move it from there. So I kind of never really had any kind of real interaction with church growing up, and the same went for my wife as well, clear across the other side of the country in San Diego. And when we met, again, similar idea. We had spiritual understanding of who God is, of Jesus Christ, but not really any other fundamentals or understanding around that. My wife started to make some friends when our oldest son Henry was born. He's now 7 years old. And the first group of friends that she had, the mom friends that she had, were also going to Loving Moms classes here at CFC. And they very kindly brought her into that world and introduced her to Loving Moms classes. I was candidly very skeptical of Loving Moms and what that meant. And she would be bringing home items, and I was a little standoffish at first because of my prior experiences with folks that were involved in churches. And but every week she would come home and she would talk about how we can help to raise our children and giving great ideas of how that can happen. And slowly but surely I stopped being a skeptic and started listening more and more of how we can help to raise our children to be good, moral, ethical little young boys. Now 7 years on, I have three children. Henry and Clark are over at Bush Ridge. Henry is in first grade and Clark is in DK classes over at Bush. And we actually just became members of CFC just this year. We are still not baptized, but we are actually getting baptized next month here at CFC. So we're very excited. The entire family is being baptized because none of us have them. I'd like to kind of share a little bit more, if that's okay with you all, of essentially of what I've learned here at CFC is, in the past, it was, again, you're a sinner, nothing you really can do can make up for that. Here at CFC, some of the messages that finally really started to get through to me is that you are a sinner, and that's okay, but that's okay in the sense that Jesus Christ died for our sins, and that we are able to continue to grow in God's light. And no one is perfect except for Jesus Christ that worked on this earth. And I don't think if I didn't have that message at CFC that I would have accepted a phone call from my parents who I had an estranged relationship for my entire adulthood. When they called, they wanted to be back in my life, but also have a understanding and connection and relationship with my children. If I hadn't been going to CFC at the time, I think it would have been a very different conversation. And I don't think that I would have accepted and provided that forgiveness to them. And I think I would have regretted it now, and I think I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't accept their apology and provide that forgiveness to them. It's still not a great relationship, but we're working on it. But I wouldn't have that if it weren't for CFC, if it weren't for the teachings of Jesus Christ. And again, I think Pastor Stone, I think all the other pastors here, and the dear families that I've learned to grow with and love here at CFC. So thank you all very much for listening to my testimony.
Thank you so much, Ian. I did find more testimonies. Does everybody have the testimonies this page? Can somebody, is there a volunteer to pass these out? Thank you, John. Thank you, John. So, Ian, when y'all invited me to be your pastor almost 5 years ago, October 1st will be 5 years. One of the things you all said to me, all of you, is we've got to get younger couples. And the Lord has blessed us in that. And Ian is an example of that, of someone who's outside of Christ, who comes all the way in, will be baptized, who's given that testimony of faith in Jesus Christ. And there are now 60 or 70 of those couples. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and primarily they're you. You've invited people to church, and God is blessing those invitations. And I'm just going to read a couple of these quotes. You can take the quotes home with you, but we just have had people say this or email this to us, and so we just, again, want you to see what's happening in your church. Now, the first one is from a family with grammar and middle school children. They've been a member for 3 years, and it says, CFC reminds us of the goodness of the gospel each week through gathered worship and through the community of believers there that we fellowship with. The gospel-centered preaching and teaching and the way the gospel categories of fall, sin, redemption, and restoration are woven into worship each week really remind us how glorious Christ is, both in his accomplished work and in his person. That's what any church wants to do, right? Lift high Jesus Christ. You see a couple more there. I'll just jump to the second page, probably your back page of the first one, but a family with preschool children, and they've been members for 18 months. I've witnessed large spiritual growth in my extended family. I believe this has largely been due to the grace-centered teachings and focus on the gospel. I joined because my wife found a church family. I stayed committed because it's part of our family. I have felt the most growth through the mentorship from the pastors. And this person had not been a member of a church for years. And so I just wanted you to have quotes from people coming to our church that points out that God is at work. And let me say over and over again, if I get run over by a truck, God's not going to stop blessing his church. God loves CFC more than you. He loves it more than me. And he's working in and through the lives of the people, and he's drawing people to us. So one of the big places that God uses in our church, and there's a lot of contact points, is our women's ministry. When I came to CFC, there were several places of help, but that was one of the big places of help. And we have this ministry called Loving Moms. So we have, on Tuesdays, the women have Bible studies for women of all ages and various topics, really beautiful. On Thursday now we have Loving Moms, which is targeting moms with young kids. About 95 women are signed up currently for the class that starts in 3 weeks. Half of them don't attend church.
Wow.
That's a glorious, did I just cut off time? I bet that hold on. Don, it's blinking red. Does that mean the battery's bad? Yeah. Let me project again. Sorry. So if half of them are unchurched, that's your church, your women's ministry, doing the Great Commission in a way that glorifies God. We're inviting people in to safe places. And I have a quote from a young mom on the very back page called Jordan Kennison that really speaks to that Loving Moms class. But let me tell you, this would apply to the divorce recovery, to the grief share, to the men's ministries. We have these testimonies everywhere. But Jordan says, women's ministry is what got my family in the door at CFC. For a long time, I myself was not a member of the church, but attended the Loving Moms class and other women's events regularly because of the way I was welcomed and nourished there. That is you. It's not your staff. It's you loving people and caring for them. Being a stay-at-home mom to young kids is often isolating and hard, so a program that offers free childcare, encouragement through Scripture, and fellowship with other moms is invaluable. I could just cry thinking of the days I felt like I had nothing left to give my kids, being stressed at the door, being greeted at the door by kind faces like Heather or Marissa, who are eager to love them for a few hours so I can feel like myself again and be reminded why I'm doing this. The programming feels intentional and well-planned, and the teaching is always rich. Furthermore, my family is continually blessed by CFC's use of resources towards things like marriage and parenting seminars, often made available to the whole community and not just church members. It seems to me that CFC has truly put its money where its mouth is in saying we value families and we want every family members to flourish. So we're seeing a good number of people converted from being non-Christians to Christian through these various ministries. These ministries that we do are front doors for people, and our women's ministry especially is blessing us. And so God is at work in our church, and we're thankful for that, and we're thankful for what we see Him doing. A few other just highlights of what's going on in our church. For instance, in our youth ministry, they had 83 people this summer, 83 middle schoolers who joined them for Super Week. Don, you ready? I heard it clunk. Let's see if it clunked. Good. There we go. Oh yeah, that's so much better. My voice. So 83 middle schoolers for Super Week at the beginning of the summer. Remember the interns? All of us look at that and think that's the way you throw your back out, but it's all the way you reach middle schoolers. That was funny. Thank you back there. We had 30 kids who went to our senior high retreat in Colorado. We had 53 go to our middle school camp in San Diego. They also did 2 mission trips this year with our mission trip. And our youth have had a big outreach now with Jeff down at, let me read it, at Good News. So they've been going down on Sunday night and having a camp in the park right there where they're meeting kids at Good News. And Jeff has really loved this. Our kids have been blessed by this. It puts them in mission, puts them in front of people who are very different than them. It creates a gospel dilemma for our youth. And we're really thankful for that. Chris always needs volunteers, and you're not too old. And when I say youth volunteers, you think, good, that's not me, but it could be you. If you're willing to hang out with high schoolers on Wednesday night, or if you live near the church and this does need proximity, they need homes to have discipleship groups in very near the church. Chris needs that. And he also needs you to pray for his kids and his staff. I'll remind you that Jordan Lear came in the spring to be the junior high director, has done a marvelous job. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. We'll probably be looking to add a girls junior high intern after the first of the year so that Lindsay just has more help, because all ministry, adult and children, it's always more women than men. So Lindsay needs help, and we're planning on adding that after the first of the year. We see growth in our community groups. Last fall, there were 21 of them. This fall, there'll be 26, with 2 others thinking about starting up. And we're going to say over and over, to know people in this church, you're going to have to get in a community group. It takes a few efforts, but you're not going to know us through Sunday morning worship. I don't mean the message or scripture. If you really want friends, what you need, you're going to have to do it through community groups. Rob Penley has done a tremendous job with those community groups. We had about 60 members in our 60 people attending our last new members class. They're signing up now for the next one. We anticipate anywhere from 40 to 80 in our next new members class. About half of those folks tend to join. We've seen a number of people converted in our new members class, which is always sweet. We had summer nights this summer. We try to not be like the rest of the Tucson and just disappear for the summer. So we had 3 Wednesday nights where we had about 100 people in the room with Rob and Chad teaching. It was really a sweet time. It's really a wonderful time. Our children's ministry had about 117 kids in the Vacation Bible School. We're having about 130 on Sunday morning. And this week we hired Kyle Bushelman son of the church, to come back when he graduates in December and to be Heather's assistant for children's ministry. Yeah, we're excited about that. Kyle, last weekend with Heather, was gone on vacation, filled in and didn't miss a beat. Part of the way he didn't mean to is got the job, and he's excited about it. In the summer when he was bored, he would go to Heather and say, how can I help? That's how you get a job right there. He can do for administration for him. Our children are growing so explosively. This will show up in some of our challenges that Heather couldn't be gone, so Kyle enables her to be gone and enables us to do a lot more with our children's ministry. We're excited about Kyle being with us. So that's sort of the spiritually where our church is. We feel like it's in a very good place. We're excited about what God's doing. So what are the challenges that our church has right now? So I think our challenges are really about space. So this church, when it was built with the intention of building more, and it stopped, right? There's on the county register a big worship center out there where the grass is, where you come in the front, that was never built. If that building had been built, we would have more than 6 offices. We have 6 offices in this church building. We can't store things. We got about 14 boxes of books in the other day. We never had to put them. So everything that we experience as a staff, and this is a blessing, is about space. The children take up every room on the north side of this hallway, and they're outgrowing those rooms. There's a possibility, so Bereans, you have to forgive me, that we will have to start for second service a children's worship service in here so that we are in compliance. We will find a place for the Bereans to meet. Everybody, put your Berean gun down. But we may need to move the Bereans up so we can do children's worship, so that we have the right number of students. That's a great problem to have. I've talked about this before. It's been a little bit slower. We're in the process of creating a master plan for the church. Primarily, that looks like things like re-roofing the hallway, getting rid of the big columns so we have more space in this hallway right here that we use. It looks like adding on to the back of our offices, probably 3 offices. And it probably looks like trying to build a building in that grass, not a worship center, but probably a youth house. So this is our best room, and we love this room, except that it smells like a gym because the youth use it. They tear it up. That's their youth. We love that. We love their church, but we need a place where they can tear up so we can have a place to do things like a new members class or a Berean study or children's worship that doesn't smell like a gym. So one building might buy us as many as 4 rooms, right? We'd have offices in there and storage. So that probably would be executed hopefully next year. What I mean by executed is shown to the congregation, voted on to build, start raising money. You're probably a ways away from actually moving dirt, but we just need more space. That's the biggest challenge we have in the church. I would love for us to outgrow our worship center, but I also don't want us to outgrow it because we don't have a solution for that. I don't know if in the future we'll plant a church or if we'll go to another site. Second service has been pretty explosive in its growth. It's now much larger than the first service. The last 3 weeks it's had between 50 and 100 more people than first service. Now some of that is snowbirds aren't here, right? So when snowbirds come, then we get competitive. But it's full. And we'll figure out what to do. But that's a blessing of Jesus, but that's sort of our dilemma in leadership. I want you to know that we are going to see 3 things we hope executed in the next 6 to 8 months. One, we are in the process of interviewing and hiring an executive director. The church has never been run better. We have Jane Dykstra as our office manager. We have Marcus Brown as our facilities director. Things are clean, they're cared for. Marcus knows it. But we need somebody to run the business out of the church. We have a good grip on our budget. We need somebody to have a great grip on our budget. We're not overspending, underspending, but that thing is a bear. Currently, I'm your executive director. That's not the best use of me. If you make me your executive director, your church will be chaotic and not as organized as you need to. I'm not being sarcastic. That's not how God made me. So we're currently interviewing someone for that, and we'll maybe interview several someones for that. But I think in the next 6 months, maybe sooner, we'll have someone here who will really help us execute the vision. If we're going to do a building program, we have to have an executive director to lead that charge. That's a bunch of meetings, and that's a bunch of work. We will probably hire a youth female intern for the spring to help Lindsay, as I mentioned. And even though Winston and John have several times announced their retirement, we're going to have them work a little bit more next year. We're not prepared at this point to hire somebody into a pastoral care role, which we need, and they're great at it, and they're willing to keep going. John is doing less and less with the church in Catalina, so can give us more and more time. John has actually become the head of our young professionals ministry, which we didn't launch. We had no vision for. We didn't try it, and so there's 40 people coming to that, right? So John has really done a good job with that.
John Miller, right?
John Miller, that's right. Not John Stone, John Miller. Sorry, John Miller. And so those are the challenges. We have some staffing challenges. We've probably never been run better, but we just need to be better at going forward. Which brings us to where we are financially as a church. And the person who used to produce the great little diagrams doesn't work anymore. So you have John Stone's take on a budget, forgive me. I have a great idea of where we are. Let me tell you the pertinent big numbers without the pie chart. Through July 2002 compared to 2003, in 2002 we had brought in $1.194 million. This year we brought in 1.203, which means our giving was pretty much the same. Two caveats to that. Number one, for some reason last year was the worst August we had had in 4 years. No idea why. We're about to have our best August, so we're a little further ahead on a little bit bigger budget than last year. We're trending about the same in terms of giving. The giving has been good and generous, and I'm thankful, but I'll always say this. If this church tithed, we'd have to have a lot of meetings about how to spend that money. That's no insult. Two things can be true at once. People can be giving generously, but we need people to give. People ask me all the time, does the church need the money? And this is where I've become too honest. Well, no. I mean, Jesus can do all his holy will without a dime. The church needs money. I mean, we have old air conditioners. We have a room that smells like a gym. We have all sorts of needs. But we are in a good place financially. Except for two things. We have spent a lot of money on air conditioners this year, my friends. A lot of money. This church is also old. So things are wearing out. This is our 30th anniversary. It's the 23rd year this church has been up. You know, we replaced 10 air conditioners back in the spring. We've replaced 2 more since. We fixed the Lazzarella home up for Rob Penley to live in. He's living there permanently. And wouldn't you know it, the minute we fixed it up, it flooded. So, I don't know who among you, because I don't know who gives and I don't know who gives what, but we had raised about $40,000 for the Lazzarella house, and you'll see that on the back of one of these. But we've now spent about $47,000 on the house. So that's not bad. What happened was after we got it in shape, there was a lot of rot, there was a lot of problems. The pipe behind the shower broke while they were out of town. If they'd been in town, it flooded the whole back of the house. They're moving back in now. It's been a real blessing to them. But we've overspent a little bit on that, and that's God's providence. In terms of our air conditioning, I think I'm going back and forth on the front page, you'll see, and I know I couldn't get the Excel sheet to print well into it, but ignore the AC income number, but look, we've spent $150,431 of non-budgeted money on air conditioners in this calendar year. Now, if I were able to copy and paste better, the bottom numbers parallel these. So the first line, HVAC repair to 27.5 ton unit damaged by vandalism, equates to the first line of $1,251. Does that make sense? So those bottom lines are described in the top. So Our church has generously given to our capital campaign fund and to our AC fund a total of $118,358 so far. We, your session, had been saving money monthly to replace the other worship center AC. Do you remember 2 summers ago, we lost one. It cost us about $52,000. Now it's going to cost us we have a second unit that's 22 years old, and there's an AC company out here about every 2 weeks keeping that baby pumping because it's an 8-month order to get. So we've ordered a new one. We'd saved about $40,000 for it, but when we had to replace the 10 and the 2 more and the vandalism, we spent the 40. We raised 118, so we're to the good, except like you and your family, we spent savings. I don't mean we have a good surplus in this church. At the beginning of the year, it was a little bit over $1 million. Every year, we spend down that surplus as we tithe, and we get to December. Remember that all nonprofits receive between 22 and 26% of their money in December, and we make it up in December. So financially, we're not in trouble, but we have on order, which we don't know exactly. So hear me, I don't know this number. It's higher than 60,000. It's almost certainly higher than 70,000. The second unit coming for out there will come out of the first of the year, and the 40,000 we're spending is gone. Now we'll budget for that next year. We'll account for that. But when people say, "Does the church need money?" Yes, we've had to spend. We've raised at your generosity 120,000, but we probably need another 50 to 60 to cover the expenses of this building and of our church life together. And the one thing I can tell you is, God can do all of His holy will whenever He wants. But we probably won't grow as a church without air conditioner. That's just a fact in Tucson. He will do His holy will, but it'll be a challenge. So your generosity in the giving has been great. We need it. I will describe it better in the future. Marcus was out of town. Marcus has almost all these numbers. Unfortunately, Marcus' sister died unexpectedly, and his dad had a stroke. Not related. So some of my numbers, forgive me, are a little jumbled because he's gone. And so these numbers are fairly accurate. But these are the challenges of our church. So our giving has been great. Our giving is slowly inching up. When you grow, giving lags a little bit. Part of why we need a master plan, part of why we probably need to do a capital campaign fund is we need new bathrooms. I love our bathrooms. They're clean. But when I walk in them, I think I'm in a Russian research facility. They're just dated. We need to redo this room. We need to build a building. Our parking lot is hanging on by a thread. When we recovered it this spring and people gave money for that, the company said, "We'll do it, but it's just not going to last. Your parking lot's gone." Why? It's 22 years old in Tucson. That's probably $600,000 to repay, right? But we need a capital campaign that is professional, articulated, that really leads the congregation in giving for those things, and that's coming. So here's my answer to why people say, "Do we need your giving?" Yes. We need it for the gospel, and we need it for our building, actually, which is part of our gospel ministry here. But it has been a good year so far, and especially I just want to say, when I say our giving looks flat, it really wasn't flat. Last year, so we've raised that $118,000 last year at this time in our capital campaign. We'd raised about $35,000. So you see the church has given a ton more money this year overall. People just have chosen rightly to give some of it into that capital campaign, and we're a little ahead of our July to July. We're way ahead in August. Again, I don't know why last August was as bad as it's ever been, but we're about $35,000 ahead already this August than we were last August. So God is blessing our church. We've got the normal challenges, and we're in a good place financially. Questions? Yes. Gosh, Bart has a question. Who is surprised by this development? Yes, Bart Ladd.
Do we need an executive director to, at meetings like this, or halfway through the year, farther than that, to get a snapshot, a picture of the financial situation? I heard what you said. Typically, we would expect.
Correct. The person in the office used to do that's gone, and so Bart, we need two things. So we need an executive director somebody asked this in the first hour, what's the difference in executive director and executive pastor? Mega churches, and we're not a mega church, they hire executive pastors to oversee the ministry staff. Does that make sense? We're hiring somebody, Bart, to run our business. The session needs better snapshots of where we are on everything, and the congregation does. Absolutely. So this person would run half this meeting, for instance, and you would have far clearer and more information. I have learned, and with several session members, where we're under budget, where we're over budget, and we manage that well. Communicating that is a challenge. But also, it's just true that there's just a lot to be done here at this church. From a business standpoint, I don't mean just from a financial standpoint, Bart. I mean from 2 trees fell in the front, and we found the pack mountain rest, and all that needs to be somebody beside me. I love my job. But I dread coming in Monday mornings because I am the executive pastor on Monday morning. And there's many Mondays I don't get down the hall because I've just got to answer so many questions. We need somebody that does their job. Does that answer your question, Bart? You will get better information when we get a director for you, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have security needs?
We don't. We commissioned some really faithful people in the sort of both military, police, firemen to create a security report for us. I almost don't like to go. That security report is currently moving through committees. So we have a security plan now. We will have a beefed up one. But I think you're asking, how do we stop from getting our ACs vandalized? And what Marcus did was buy, we know we got a quote to put in a security system. It was massively too much, $180,000. So he bought 30 Ring cameras that he can talk to all of them, and he has a computer and a phone. And like recently, somebody came on our property. I don't think to do nefarious stuff, but was walking down here, and Marcus got on and said, "My name's Marcus Brown. You're not supposed to be here. Please leave." And they walked off. So we can see all the air conditioners. We can see that we actually put up a pole today. If you go in the front service, so that we've had a couple of the things stolen from under the car. The catalytic converter stolen. So we're about to have a camera facing the parking lot. So I think, are you secure here? Yes. I don't know that all of you know that plan. But the building is far more secure now than when we had it done, and we'll come up with a more comprehensive plan. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
You said all of you know that plan, but I don't know what you mean.
I meant to say not all of you know that plan.
Okay, not all of you.
Yeah, I meant to
Can you
say.
tell us?
Well, between our ushers, and we usually have 2 security people going, and so one of the things we're clear about, and we've said this before, I don't like saying this a lot, is we know that many of you have guns and you bring them to church. That's not our security plan. And I mean that very seriously. I'm serious. That's not the security plan. My fear is a shooter comes in to kill the pastor, and some of you rise up to shoot the shooter, and because you're an unskilled shooter, I die, and the shooter's scared, and you're scared, and I'm dead, and he didn't shoot me. So that's my fear. We have policemen, we have border agents, we have sort of hear me in the right way, like we've talked. We have people. There was actually a recent real threat against us. We sent that picture to the right people. We stationed people that day to watch to see if this person showed up. We've tracked where that person is. So behind the scenes, there's a security plan. What we need is a piece of paper or 2 that we hand to everybody and every new member and say, this is what's happening that you know. There's always more that you don't know. Does that make sense? Kind of. Don't shoot me, as it would. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. And it may be because of travel, et cetera, not being in attendance. But it seemed to me last summer, I was hearing more from the pulpit about the capital needs, just reminders. I don't know if that's true. You may have been doing it all the time, and I've just missed it. But obviously, there's the capital campaign. There's current needs also.
So that's fair. So this is interesting. And this is an easy, honest answer. We get complaints a little bit no matter what we do. And so I mean, you love God's people, period. But you never know if what somebody's telling you is true. Don Adams is an elder, and he might say to me, John, I think X, only for me to discover that the other 11 elders don't think. You don't know. So when we did a lot of that, we got some small pushback. I think fair, hey, you're talking about money too much. I mean, partly that's why we do the Financial Peace University class, because that really has helped people change. I think that the reason we're less organized on this one, though, is that when we came into the year, we had 3 clear needs. Rezone that parking lot, get some video cameras up, and replace the alarm. It was clear. This just keeps happening. So I've been a little timid. Hey, we need 60,000. Actually we need 80. Did I mention the van in this one? I haven't. I forgot something. So this is not I did a poor job with y'all. When the youth were going to San Diego, they used the school vans. And this will be the last time they use the school vans. And one of those, like everybody has their water thing. It fell off at 70 miles an hour and hit the van into reverse and destroyed the school's van. So we're on the hook for $27,000. But this is an example that nobody's fault. It's the providence of God. I mean that. So like some of that sheet last year, like we were able to put it out and talk about it, and now again, do your reserves pay for that? Yes. But I will announce, hey, we're trying to replace the school's van for $27,000 at some point. That happened 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks ago. So some of that's been different. I'm not paranoid. Y'all really love me well, but you don't want to give every Sunday go, okay, so this week the van broke. Hey, next week the and we're getting our hands around. Some of this is the executive director, like somebody's got. Part of what we're even studying is what's going to wear out when. So it's been more haphazard this year in terms of how we experienced it than last year, where we knew, got to upgrade those screens, got to get that alarm in, and got to get that parking lot from washing away. This has been, hey, you got to replace 8, actually it's 10. Hey, there's vandalism. So your sense of it is right, and also, I think we've just seen so many visitors, and we see a lot of visitors in the summer. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little self-conscious of it. You've helped me actually right now, but you don't want to talk about money every Sunday.
It's just, I'm speaking personally, maybe I'm just slow and need, hey, remember capital thing.
No,
it doesn't have to be from the pulpit.
We were way better last year than this year. I mean, the vandalism ended up being covered by insurance, and I think some of the Lazzarella House will also. It's interesting that our insurance company jumped on the AC unit. Part of the reason they jumped on it was they said, hey, we'll have to rent you a unit, and those are renting for about $12,000 a month. So suddenly they had the capacity to fix it, and they did. The Lazzarella House flooding has been more back and forth, so part of the reason I just said, hey, it's vandalized, pray for it. That got paid for by our insurance. The flooding, I'm not sure. So some of it, I don't have answers the way I did. Like last year, people would ask me about that sheet. And we don't have as much. So your perception is actually true, is what I'm saying. It's a good word. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is there a warranty on the condition of the parking lot? Because I've noticed it's already crumbling.
You get about 6 months with those. I mean,
6 months?
Well, because here's what I mean.
The parking lot was just resurfaced. It was not.
It was resurfaced, not repaved. So they can't make. So when they're resurfacing it, our parking lot is broken. So bad news. We need to do a $600,000 repave. I hope it's 400. I'm gonna tell you 600. Because those cracks are now to the dirt. Part of and we'll get there, but you can't just snap your fingers on. So when we resurface it, they tell you we're just putting down tar to make it look good, and it'll keep water for a season from going down there. But you get no guarantees with that, because that's just like painting a wall. It really hadn't fixed the problem. Yes, Jeffrey.
So
yes, you can come get prickly pear from the church property.
Thank
you
you.
get prickly pear from my yard.
So my household loves the women's ministry. My wife teaches a class, she's quoted in here, all that good stuff. I'm also a little bit jealous. I kind of want in on this. What are we doing for the men?
Well, we're doing more, but not as quickly as we want. And some of that has been that men are, so you can't do a Tuesday for men, right? Women work too, but it's been harder to get to them. So, and I didn't get these numbers from Chad because he was preaching, but we have probably, 8 or 10 more men's small groups going on. We've had some things work. Monday Night Football was fine, but it didn't work. So we had a gathering at a home that really worked. So we're going to do more of those. I think that I'm going to honestly answer and say it's harder to know how to quote do men's ministry than do the women's ministry because it's easier to measure the women than the men. So you're seeing more things happen, but not certainly not that big. So you're just going to have to stay jealous for a season. We'll get there. Yes, sir.
The Push Ridge Academy, long-range plans, any thinking? At some point, someone said something about a new elementary school up by the high school.
So John Tyler is the new head of school, and he was introduced, and some of y'all met him here. One of his observations was, and I knew this from school board members, they had never actually gotten into a long-range plan. Some of that is because they started the South Campus. And that sort of changed it. So they're in the middle of doing a plan. They're probably where we are. They're in the initial stage of study. This is my read on it. The school has never been healthier financially. It's never had better teachers. It's got a new head of school. And I think they have 2 open places in the school today. First time ever. They're never going to stop using that property. I mean, I think there was some thought that they would just be one site over there. I don't think that'll ever be true. They may eventually move 2 grades from here over there, but they've just finished a big project where they did basically, what's the office building called? The portable.
And the NPR is being built right now.
And now there's a multi-purpose room being built. So on the books, I think there is a plan to put the elementary school over there. I would just say, in a healthy way, I think John Tyler's like, we got to ask all the right questions because those are $8, $12, $15 million projects. And we've just started at least a $20 million project in the South. Even though that school will probably never look exactly like this school. What do I mean by that? I just mean physically. The land we have is enough for about 8 grades. That project is now a priority for a lot of reasons. Not over against our children. I just mean we launched it. We basically put 3 guys in space and told them to build a space shuttle when they got up there. So that one they're going to have to get their head around that one. So that will change some of it. We have plenty of school up here. There's always, every institution needs more buildings and more dollars. But we're educating over 900 people this year with more people wanting to get in. And that will be addressed. But there are no permanent plans today. Because and I say this, in a beautiful way, we started a South Campus. And I will say this, those parents are way happier than the other parents. I'll just make this casual observation that it is very fun to go down there and talk to parents. It's not always as fun to talk to parents in the upper school. But that's upper school. That's just because their kids have fun and hate their parents. But who can solve that problem? Does that answer your question, though?
Yes.
John, is that a fair answer? He's a school board member. Yes, sir.
John, there's a part of our church that has a memorial wall.
Yes.
And so few of our members know about it. I don't know how you might want to promote that, but I was talking to a widow woman this morning, and she wasn't aware of it. She was glad that I pointed it out to her. And we have so many old members that, would like to use that for deceased people.
First of all, Ivan, I appreciate that you admit that some people will need it, because I get the sense that some people don't think that's coming, but I feel that. That's probably you prompting me to make a couple of announcements. Like that, what you just told me is we need to say from the pulpit every 4 months, hey, remember, we have a memorial wall. It's right at, we've never said that. We have some literature on it. And I just have never thought about saying that in the pulpit. So thank you. You're right. John, great John.
Questions in regards to the growth of this campus versus the decision of planting another church. Is that something that belongs locally in our session? Is that something that is a decision by the bigger presbytery? And what are we doing maybe as a church to look at, is there an area in Tucson that needs another church rather than growing the campus here?
Okay, so I think the question for where Tucson needs a church is properly sits in presbytery, and they are asking and answering that question. So that I don't think it's ever healthy when a church with resources says, "Oh, we're going to go over here and plant a church," when we don't fully know that. I think when we get to and finish a master sort of plan for us, and that may be a year off in like having it, I hope we're not forced to make that decision before. We basically have two options, it looks like to me. If God were to say, hey, I'm going to keep blessing this church, we're either going to have to create another site or plant a church. The statistics tell you that planting a church is highly ineffective at getting people out of your church. In fact, the more a church plants, the healthier it gets. So it's a catch-22. You find 80 people, they leave, and 160 fill in quickly. We probably could do a site at the school. There's a church meeting there now. They're getting more space. So if we said, I'm going to talk more about this. We've thought about this a lot. We said we're doing a site, that might work. But here's the most interesting thing about being the pastor of this church. There is no church in Tucson that sits in a probably worse and better place than our church. You shouldn't put churches in the foothills. They don't like churches up here, and they're against you in everything you do. But we sit in this weird place where people from both directions come. So when you go around the corner, right, people aren't coming over there. So I think the question we would ask is, if we did a site, can we get enough of us over there? Because you probably wouldn't want to quit either of these services, because we have a number of people from downtown, and we have now, I know we have 2 community groups in Midtown. We may now have a 3rd going, right? We have a couple out east. So it's funny where we are physically. And so we may plant a church. I think the Presbyterian, the PCA, and those would say, great, but you won't solve your problem. You solve your problem with a site. And I think then that gets to be a harder and easier. I mean, okay, we've got to have a site. What can do it? Well, the school can do it. So that's kind of where we are. Yeah. Jeffrey.
Notice that the lampposts out here fell down because they rusted out or something?
The other 2 are coming down soon.
Okay.
We don't know how to turn them on. No one in this church could turn the lights on in that courtyard.
Okay.
And one fell over. I mean, Marcus got interested when they had the guy out there, and they were turning every light, and we could never get them on. So that one fell over. The other 2 are coming down.
Okay.
But the reason it looks like a crime scene is, if your child pulls the bucket off, it's not sharp, but there's electrical wires there that we turned them off, and then a bunch of the building went out. So we got an electrician coming out. Remember we're an old church, right? Good question. 1 more, 3 more.
I just want to say how delightful, this update is, just to see where our church is doing spiritually. And thank you for all the leadership and all that.
Thank you.
It's just a blessing to hear it.
It's a blessing to be the pastor here. Thank you.
It really is. Yeah.
And Bart will have a better financial update next time. Thank you. Well, everyone, thanks for being here, and go in peace. And you can always email me the question you were afraid to ask, seriously, or come by and see me.